Hey guys, tonight we are heading back to the very cradle of civilization, the land between the two rivers, Mesopotamia. But we aren't going there to build a ziggurat, or to watch a king lead a chariot charge, or even to invent the wheel. We are going there to engage in a task so incredibly mundane, so frustratingly delicate, and so messy that it was usually dumped on the lowest-ranking apprentice in the entire building. We are going to sit in a dark mud brick room and scrape the bottom of a bowl for 45 minutes. You probably won't survive this, mostly because the sheer boredom of repetitive manual labor in 2000 BCE might actually cause your brain to spontaneously shut down in protest, forcing you into a coma of pure indifference. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. I love seeing the global map of insomniacs light up. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are standing outside in the pre-dawn chill of the city of Nippur. The sky to the east, over the Zagros Mountains, is just beginning to bruise with a faint, dusty purple. But the streets are still held in the thick, heavy blue of the night. It's quiet. The only sound is the low, rhythmic lapping of the Euphrates River against the clay banks a few streets away, and the occasional bleat of a goat that, like you, has woken up entirely too early. You pull your rough wool cloak tighter around your shoulders. The air smells of damp river mud, cooling baked brick, and the faint, acrid scent of dying fires. You are an apprentice scribe, a student in the Ajaba, the tablet house. Usually, your day involves kneading immense amounts of wet clay and having your handwriting critiqued by a man with a cane who seems to enjoy using it. But today, the father of the school, the headmaster, has given you a different task. Today, you aren't pressing wedges in the mud. You are making ink. You trudge through the narrow, winding alleyways. The city walls loom high and silent. You reach the heavy wooden door of the schoolhouse. It's unlocked, of course. Who would break into a school? To steal what? More homework? You push the door open. The hinges are made of leather and wood, and they give a soft, dry groan as they pivot. You step inside. The interior of the Ajaba is pitch black and surprisingly cold. The thick mud brick walls are excellent at keeping out the scorching heat of the Mesopotamian noon, but they also hold on to the chill of the night with a stubborn possessiveness. You navigate by memory, sliding your feet across the packed earth floor to avoid tripping over the low benches or the baskets of dried reeds. Your destination is the corner niche where the oil lamps are kept. You strike a spark with a piece of flint and light a small, simple rushlight. The flame sputters, then catches, casting a weak, dancing orange glow against the beige walls. Shadows jump in the corners. You see the shelves stacked with dried clay tablets, thousands of them. Contracts, hymns, receipts for bushels of barley, letters complaining about the quality of copper ingots. It's the bureaucracy of an empire, sleeping in the dark. But you ignore the library. Your focus is on the lamps that were used last night. There are 6 of them sitting on a low wooden table. They aren't fancy. They're simple, pinched bowls of fired clay, blackened and greasy. Last night, the senior scribes were working late, copying out omens by the light of burning sesame oil. The oil has burned away, the wicks are charred stubs, and the lamps are cold. This is what you are here for. You sit down on a woven reed mat, crossing your legs. You take a deep breath. It smells of stale smoke. You reach into your pouch and pull out your tool for the morning, a small, delicate scraper made from a polished piece of sheep bone. It looks a bit like a dental tool, which is fitting, because working in this place is like pulling teeth, only slower. You pick up the first lamp. It's heavy and slick with leftover grease. You hold it up to your rushlight. The inside of the rim is coated in a thick, velvety layer of matte black soot. This is carbon, not oil. Pure, elemental carbon. It is the result of incomplete combustion. When the sesame oil burned, it released smoke, and that smoke condensed on the cool clay of the bowl. This is the pigment. In Egypt, they might use charcoal or other minerals, but here, for the fine ink used on ostraca, potsherds, or the rare imported papyrus, you want the finest particulate possible. You want lampblack. You bring the bone scraper to the rim. Scritch, dot, oh yeah. It's a tiny sound, a dry, scratching whisper in the silent room. You work carefully. If you scrape too hard, you'll chip the clay of the lamp, and then your ink will be gritty. Nobody wants gritty ink. Gritty ink ruins the reed brush, and a ruined reed brush means a cane to the back of the legs. So, you have to be gentle. You are essentially trying to shave a shadow off a rock. Scritch, scrape, scritch. The soot falls away in fine, flaky ribbons. It defies gravity, floating in the air for a second before settling into the small collection shell you've placed on your lap. It is lighter than air. It is darker than the deepest night outside. Historians still argue whether the choice of oil was strictly for economic reasons, or if the scribes knew that different oils produced different qualities of black. Some texts suggest that sesame oil was preferred not just because it was abundant in the Fertile Crescent, but because it produced a greasier smoke that resulted in a lustrous, shiny ink when dried, unlike the matte finish you'd get from burning animal fat. You, personally, don't care about the luster. You just care that it's incredibly messy. You sneeze. Achoo. Disaster. The puff of air from your nose hits the collection shell. A small black cloud mushrooms up into your face. You close your eyes, but it's too late. You can feel the microscopic particles settling into your pores. You wipe your nose with the back of your hand, which only succeeds in smearing a black streak across your cheek like you're preparing for a very low-budget commando raid. You sigh, waiting for the dust to settle, and go back to the lamp. Scrape, scrape. The repetition is hypnotic. You move the lamp in a slow circle, chasing the black deposit. The world narrows down to the tip of your bone tool. You aren't thinking about the Gilgamesh epic you have to memorize later. You aren't thinking about the girl you saw at the well yesterday. You are just a machine for harvesting smoke. It takes you 20 minutes to clean the first lamp. You have 5 more to go. The pile in your shell is growing, but agonizingly slowly. It looks like a small heap of black velvet. This material is hydrophobic. It hates water. If you tried to mix this directly with water right now, it wouldn't blend. It would just float on top, mocking you. That's a problem for future you, though. Present you just needs to scrape. You pick up the second lamp. This one is even dirtier. A mainstream historical fact to keep in mind while you scrape is that the Mesopotamian school system was incredibly rigid. The students, or sons of the tablet house, were almost exclusively boys from wealthy families, and the discipline was harsh. But there were also the big brothers, senior students who acted as teaching assistants. They were the ones who usually assigned these terrible chores. You suspect the big brother who assigned you this task was just jealous of your superior clay wedging technique last week. It's petty office politics, Bronze Age style. Scritch, scrape, scritch. The sound is the only thing keeping you awake. The sun is starting to rise outside. You can see the gray light shifting to a pale gold through the high, narrow windows near the ceiling. The temperature in the room is rising, just a fraction of a degree. The smell of the oil is warming up, becoming heavier. You finish the second lamp. Then, the third. Your fingers are cramped. Your hands are stained in indelible gray. You look at the pile of soot. It's about the size of a walnut. It doesn't look like much, but this carbon is potent. A little goes a long way. This small pile contains enough darkness to write 1,000 lines of prayers, or perhaps just a very long list of onions delivered to the temple. You pick up the final lamp. You are almost done with the harvest. The easy part is over. The messy, sticky grinding part is about to begin. So, you have your pile of soot. It sits there in your shell, a small, menacing heap of darkness that wants nothing more than to drift into the air and permanently stain your favorite tunic. But as we established earlier, soot is hydrophobic. It hates water. If you were to just dump a cup of river water onto that pile right now, the water would simply bead up and roll off, coated in a layer of black dust, like mercury on a table. To make ink, you need a mediator. You need a peacemaker. You need a binder. You push the shell of soot carefully to the side, moving slowly so you don't create a draft, and reach for a small leather pouch tied to your belt. Inside rattles the second ingredient of your morning cocktail. You undo the drawstring and pour the contents into a clean, shallow ceramic bowl. Out tumble a dozen small, jagged crystals. They look like unpolished gemstones, amber, pale gold, and russet orange. They catch the strengthening morning light coming through the high windows, glowing like little pieces of solidified honey. This is acacia gum. In a few thousand years, people will call it gum arabic, and they'll put it in everything from soda to watercolor paints. But right now, it's just the dried sap of the thorny acacia trees that dot the arid landscape outside the city walls. A mainstream historical fact to consider while you stare at these rocks is that the acacia tree is practically a manufacturing plant for the ancient world. Its wood is hard and resistant to water, perfect for boat building. Its bark is rich in tannins for curing leather. And when the bark is damaged, the tree weeps this sticky, protective sap to seal the wound. You are essentially about to glue your ink together with the tree's own immune system. You reach for the water jug standing in the corner. It's a porous clay vessel, cool to the touch because the water slowly evaporates through the sides, chilling the liquid inside. You tilt it over the bowl of amber crystals. Glug, glug, glug. You pour just enough to cover the gum. You don't want to drown it. Ink making is like cooking. You can always add more liquid, but you can't take it out once it's in. And now begins the most thrilling part of your morning, watching rocks dissolve. You sit back on your heels. You stare at the bowl. Nothing happens. The gum sits at the bottom of the water, looking stubborn. This is not like sugar dissolving in hot tea. This is a slow, gradual hydration process. The water has to work its way into the complex molecular structure of the hardened sap, swelling it, softening it, and eventually coaxing it into a liquid state. You poke one of the amber nuggets with a small wooden stick. It clicks against the side of the bowl. Hard as stone. You wait. The sun is definitely up now. You can hear the sounds of the Ajaba waking up. Somewhere in the courtyard, a junior scribe is sweeping the dust with a bundle of twigs. Swish. Swish. You can hear the distant murmur of the headmaster shouting at someone about a misfiled inventory list. But you are safe in your corner, guarding your bowl of water. 10 minutes pass. You poke the nugget again. It feels slightly tacky now. The surface has turned a whitish, cloudy color where the water is biting into it. Historians still argue whether ancient scribes heated the water to speed this process up, or if they believed that heat would damage the binding properties of the gum. Some experimental archaeologists suggest that boiling the gum makes it too brittle when it dries, leading to ink that flakes off the tablet. Others say nobody has time to sit around for an hour waiting for cold water to do the job. You, apparently, do have the time. Or rather, you have no choice. You stir the water gently. The crystals are starting to shed little ribbons of syrup. The water is turning from clear to a pale, golden yellow. It's starting to look a bit like beer, but thicker. You get a little bored, which is saying something, considering your previous activity was scraping burnt grease, and you decide to crush the crystals to help them along. You press down on the largest lump with your stick. Crunch. Why? It shatters underwater, but not into powder. It breaks into smaller, sticky fragments that cling to the bottom of the bowl. It feels like pressing down on very stiff, cold taffy. You grind the stick in a slow circle. The resistance is increasing. The water is losing its liquidity. It's becoming viscous. It's turning into mucilage. That's a lovely word, isn't it? Mucilage? It sounds exactly like what it is. Plant slime. A quirky fringe tidbit about this process is that acacia gum is actually edible. In times of famine or just extreme boredom during a long lecture on tax law, Scribes might pop a piece of the clean gum into their mouths and suck on it like a prehistoric lozenge. It's faintly sweet and keeps your mouth moist. You consider eating a piece now just to feel something, but decide against it. You need every gram for the binder. Another 20 minutes pass. Your legs are falling asleep, wincing as the circulation returns to your ankles with that familiar pins and needles static. You look back at the bowl. The individual crystals are gone. In their place is a thick, golden syrup. It looks like honey, but if you were to touch it, it would be far stickier and dry much harder. You lift the stick out of the bowl. The liquid trails after it in a long, unbroken thread, gleaming in the light. It stretches and stretches, and finally breaks with a silent snap, recoiling back into the bowl. This is the bridge. This sticky stuff is what will coat the microscopic particles of soot you harvested earlier. It will wrap around them, allowing them to be suspended in the water without floating to the top. And when you finally write with it, the water will evaporate, and this gum will harden again, trapping the black pigment against the clay or the potsherd forever. You are essentially making a liquid plastic. You give it one final vigorous stir to ensure there are no lumps. It's smooth. It's golden. It's ready. You look at your ingredients. On the left, the shell of hyperfine, airy black soot. On the right, the bowl of thick, golden plant glue. Separately, they are a mess. The soot is too flighty, the gum is too clear. But together? Together, they are the memory of the civilization. You reach for the mortar, a heavy, shallow basin made of basalt stone. It's rough and pitted from years of use. You place it between your knees. It's time to marry the smoke and the sap. And if you thought scraping the lamps was repetitive, you are about to discover the true meaning of the word grind. You pull the heavy basalt mortar toward you. It scrapes against the reed mat with a sound like a heavy stone door dragging open, a low, rough grunk. This bowl is carved from volcanic rock, heavy and black and pitted. It has likely been in the schoolhouse longer than you have been alive, and it has probably ground enough ink to write the entire history of the Sumerian kings 3 times over. You pick up the pestle. It's a fist-sized stone, smooth on the handle side but rough on the grinding face. It fits into your palm like a cold, hard egg. You look at your ingredients. This is the moment of truth. If you mess up the ratios now, you don't get ink. You get black sludge that never dries, or brittle crust that flakes off the moment someone sneezes near the tablet. You tilt the shell of soot. You tap it gently with your finger. Tap, 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 tap. The black powder cascades into the stone bowl. It lands silently, piling up in a soft, dark pyramid. It looks incredibly fragile, like a breath could scatter it. Next, the binder. You take your bowl of golden acacia syrup, your mucilage, and pour a small amount onto the soot. You don't dump it all in. You are not making soup. You are making a suspension. You drizzle a thin stream of the sticky amber liquid right onto the peak of the black pyramid. Drip, drip, glop, dot. The reaction is immediate and annoying. The soot, being the hydrophobic rebel that it is, tries to escape. The liquid rolls off the side of the powder pile, coating itself in dust but refusing to mix. You now have a bowl containing a dry hill of soot and several weird, dusty globules of gum water rolling around the edges. It looks like a failed science experiment. You sigh. You grip the pestle. You jam it down into the center of the mess. Crunch. The grinding begins. At first, it is chaotic. You aren't grinding so much as chasing the liquid around the bowl, trying to force it to accept the powder. You smash a globule of gum. It squelches, grabbing onto some soot, turning into a thick, sticky gray paste. You scrape the sides. You push the dry powder into the wet patch. Mash. Scrape. Mash. It feels gritty. Through the stone pestle, you can feel every single microscopic clump of carbon that hasn't broken down yet. Your job is to destroy those clumps. Your job is to convince 2 substances that hate each other to become one. A mainstream historical fact to meditate on while your wrist begins to ache is the incredible chemical stability of what you are creating. Carbon is elemental. It does not react with oxygen. It does not fade in sunlight. Unlike the iron gall inks of the Middle Ages, which are acidic and eventually burn holes right through the parchment, or the vegetable dyes that bleach out over centuries, this carbon ink is eternal. If you do this job right, the characters you write today could theoretically be read 5,000 years from now, looking as black and fresh as the moment they dried. You are essentially manufacturing liquid time travel. 5 minutes in, and the mixture is looking less like a disaster and more like a very stiff, very ugly dough. It's a dark charcoal gray, streaked with lighter veins of unmixed gum. It is stiff. It resists the pestle. Turn, grind, turn. You fall into the rhythm. This is the part of the job that takes over your body. Your shoulder pushes the pestle down. Your wrist twists it. Your fingers pull it back. Down, twist, pull. Down, twist, pull. The friction generates heat. You can feel the bottom of the mortar getting slightly warm. This is good. The heat helps the gum penetrate the carbon. The silence of the room is filled with a rhythmic shush of stone on stone. It is a white noise generator made of rock. Your eyes glaze over. You stare into the swirling black vortex in the bowl. Historians still argue vigorously about the final form of this ink. Did Mesopotamian scribes keep their ink in a liquid state in pots? Or did they let it dry into solid cakes that were re-wetted with a brush, like modern watercolors? The archaeological evidence is tricky, because liquids evaporate and cakes crumble. But looking at the stiff paste you are wrestling with, you can see why a solid cake might be practical. Carrying around a pot of this sticky, permanent sludge seems like a recipe for a laundry disaster that not even the Tigris River could wash out. 20 minutes pass. Your right arm is burning. The deltoid muscle, though you don't know it by that name, is screaming in protest. You switch hands. Your left hand is clumsy, lacking the refined motor control of your right, but it provides a momentary relief. Grind, slip, grind, slip. The paste is changing. The gray is deepening. It is turning black. Not just dark gray, but a true abyssal black. And the texture is changing too. The grittiness is fading. The paste is becoming short, meaning when you pull the pestle up, the paste breaks cleanly rather than stringing out like honey. But it's not smooth enough. It's never smooth enough. You stop to scrape down the sides of the mortar with your bone tool. You gather the stray smears of paste and push them back into the center. You cannot waste a drop. A quirky fringe tidbit about ancient ink making is the use of spit. Yes, saliva. As the paste gets stiffer, it becomes harder to work. Adding more water might dilute the binder too much, making the ink run. But saliva contains enzymes and proteins that can act as a surfactant, helping the flow. It's not uncommon for a scribe to spit directly into the mortar to get the perfect consistency. You purse your lips, considering it. The paste does look a bit dry. You gather a little moisture in your mouth and patooey. Just a little drop. You mix it in. It works like magic. The paste relaxes, becoming glossy and oily. It gleams in the lamplight. You switch back to your right hand. You are in the home stretch now. You need to polish the paste. You aren't mashing anymore. You are smoothing. You move the pestle in wide sweeping circles around the rim of the bowl. Swish, swish, swish. The sound changes. It's no longer a scratchy crunch. It's a wet, sucking sound. The ink is slick. It coats the pestle in a perfect uniform layer. You lean forward, inspecting your work with the critical eye of a jeweler. You are looking for stars, tiny, microscopic specks of dry soot that haven't been wetted. If you see a star, you have to keep grinding. You see a star. You sigh. You keep grinding. The sun has moved across the floor. The beam of light that was hitting the wall is now hitting your knee. You have been grinding for an hour. Your world is this bowl. You know every pit in the stone, every curve of the pestle. You are a human millstone. But finally, it happens. You do a sweep with the pestle, and the trail of ink left behind is flawless. It is a ribbon of black glass. It is void of texture. It is smooth as oil, dark as a moonless night, and thick as cream. You stop. You let the pestle rest against the side of the bowl. You exhale, and your shoulders drop 3 inches. The noise of the grinding stops, and the silence rushes back into the room, ringing in your ears. The ink is made, but you can't write with it yet. You need a tool, and not just any stick found on the ground. You need a stylus that has been carved with the precision of a surgical instrument. You push the heavy mortar aside, wiping your sweaty forehead with your forearm to avoid the ink-stained fingers, and reach for your knife. You set the heavy mortar aside, pushing it gently toward the wall where the cool air will help the ink settle and cure. The black paste inside is perfect, a dark, glossy void, but your morning chores are far from over. A scribe cannot write with ink alone, just as a carpenter cannot build with only a saw. You need your surface, and you need your instrument. You wipe your hands on a rough woolen rag, though it does little to remove the gray stains of the soot. You reach for the leather roll containing your knives. It unrolls with a soft crackle. Inside, nestled in loops of stiff oxhide, sits your blade. It is a small tool, the handle made of polished bone, the blade forged from bronze. It isn't razor-sharp like the obsidian blades the priests use for sacrifices, but it has a sturdy, reliable edge. You run your thumb lightly across the metal. It catches the skin. Good enough. You reach into the basket of river reeds. This is Arundodonyx, the giant reed that grows in thick, impenetrable thickets along the banks of the Euphrates. It is the spine of your civilization. It is used to build houses, weave mats, construct boats, and, most importantly, record history. You select a segment. It is about the thickness of your thumb, yellow gold and hard. The skin is smooth and shiny, rich in silica, which makes it tough and waterproof. You tap it against the wooden table. Click, clack. It sounds like hollow bone. You hold the reed firmly in your left hand. Bring the bronze knife down. Scrit. Dots. You slice off the top knot of the reed. The sound is dry and sharp. You aren't making a pen nib like the Egyptians do, split down the middle to hold ink. You are making a stylus for cuneiform, but you are also fashioning a brush tip for the ink you just mixed. Today, you are preparing a polytool, one end for the clay, the other for the ink. You focus on the clay end first. This requires geometry. You need to carve the round reed into a precise shape that, when pressed into wet mud, will leave that distinctive triangular impression, the wedge that gives cuneiform its name. A mainstream historical fact to visualize here is that the word cuneiform comes from the Latin cuneus, meaning wedge. But the Sumerians didn't call it that. They just called it writing. The genius of this system was that it didn't require dragging a sharp point through the clay, which creates jagged ridges and piles up crumbs of mud. Instead, it relied on impression. You press, you lift. It is the difference between drawing in sand and stamping in sand. Clean, crisp, and fast. You shove the side of the reed. Swish. You turn it. Swish. You are aiming for a beveled end, a polyhedral shape. If the angle is too steep, the wedge will be deep and short. If the angle is too shallow, the wedge will be long and indistinct. You want the Goldilocks angle. Historians still argue ferociously about the exact shape of the stylus tip. Was it a square end held at an angle? Was it a triangular prism? Was it a simple bevel? Since organic reeds rot away, and almost none have survived the last 4,000 years, we are left guessing based on the marks in the tablets. You, however, hold the answer in your hand. It is a slightly curved bevel, carved to fit the unique mechanics of your own wrist. You pare away a microscopic sliver of reed skin. You blow the shaving away. You run your finger over the cut. It must be perfectly smooth. If there is a single fiber of reed sticking out, it will drag in the clay, leaving a ghost line that will annoy the headmaster to no end. You flip the reed over. Now for the ink end. You chew gently on the fibers of the other tip. Yes, you chew it. Your teeth crush the hard structural fibers, separating them into coarse bristles. You spit out a small piece of reed pith. You trim the bristles with your knife until they form a flat, stiff brush. This isn't for painting delicate birds. It's for painting bold, blocky Aramaic or Akkadian characters on the backs of tablets or on storage jars. Your tool is ready. You set it down next to the ink. Now, the canvas. You stand up and walk to the damp corner of the room where the clay bin sits. It is a large, low wooden box lined with wet sacking. You lift the heavy lid. The smell hits you instantly. A dense, mineral scent of wet earth, iron, and the river. It is the smell of creation. You reach in with both hands. The clay is cold. It sucks at your skin. You grab a double handful, a lump the size of a large grapefruit. It is heavy, dense, and gray. You carry it back to your mat. You sit down. Thump. You drop the clay onto the table. Now you must wedge the clay. This is a potter's term, but it is vital for a scribe too. Raw clay is full of air pockets. If you write on a tablet with an air bubble inside, your stylus will punch through the surface and fall into a void, ruining the line. If the tablet is later fired in the kiln to preserve it, that air pocket will expand and explode, blowing your homework into shrapnel. You pick up the lump. You slam it down. Whack. You push the heel of your hand into the center of the mass, stretching it out. Then you fold the top over. You pick it up. You slam it down again. Thwack. Push. Huh. Fold. D. Whack. Huh. Push. Fold. Dot. It is a rhythmic, percussive sound that echoes off the mud brick walls. It is the heartbeat of the ajuba. You are homogenizing the material. You are aligning the platelets of the clay. You are driving out the air. Thwack. The clay is stiff. It resists you. It requires force. Your shoulders, already tired from the grinding, begin to burn again. But there is something deeply satisfying about it. Clay obeys you. It warms up under your hands, become more plastic, more yielding. A quirky fringe tidbit about this process is that we sometimes find teeth marks on ancient tablets. Not artistic teeth marks, but frustration marks. A young student, overwhelmed by the difficulty of the task, or perhaps just bored out of his mind during a lecture, might bite the corner of his wet clay tablet. We also find fingerprints, thousands of them. When you hold a museum tablet today, you are often placing your fingers exactly where a Mesopotamian teenager placed theirs 4 millennia ago. It is a literal touch across time. You check the consistency. You slice the lump in half with a piece of taut string. You look at the cross-section. It is smooth, gray, and solid. No holes. No bubbles. Perfect. You slap the two halves back together and knead them into a single ball. Now you must form the tablet. You don't make a flat pancake? Flat tablets break easily. You want a pillow shape, convex on both sides, thicker in the middle, tapering to rounded edges. It fits comfortably in the palm of the left hand, which is where it will sit while you write. You roll the ball between your palms, elongating it into a cylinder. You place it on the table. You flatten it gently, patting it into a rectangle. Pat, pat, pat dotty. You smooth the edges with your thumb. You dip your fingers in the water bowl and run them over the surface. The water creates a slip, a fine slurry of liquid mud that fills in the pores and makes the surface glass smooth. It shines in the lamplight. This is the obverse, the front. It is pristine. It is a blank page made of earth, waiting for the first word. You sit back. You have your ink, dark and glossy. You have your stylus sharp and tailored. You have your tablet, wet and waiting. The preparation is complete. The physical labor is done. Now, you just have to check the flow. You have to prove that the last hour of scraping, dissolving, grinding, carving, and wedging wasn't a waste of time. You reach for a broken piece of pottery, a sherd, to run your test. You pick up the potsherd. It's a fragment of an old storage jar, curved and reddish-brown, about the size of your hand. It's rough, cheap, and disposable. The perfect scratch pad for a scribe. You hold it in your left hand, tilting it so the unglazed inner surface catches the light. This is the moment of validation. You pick up your newly carved reed stylus. You dip the fibrous, chewed end into the basalt mortar. Dip, dip. The ink doesn't splash. It coats the bristles in a thick, uniform layer. You pull the stylus out. The ink clings to it, heavy and glossy. It doesn't drip. A drop forms at the tip, hanging there, defying gravity for a second before you bring it to the pottery. You touch the brush to the reddish clay. Glide. It is beautiful. The ink flows off the reed like silk. It is intensely black against the rusty background of the sherd. You paint a single line. It is crisp. The edges are sharp, not fuzzy. The gum arabic is doing its job, holding the carbon tight, preventing it from bleeding into the porous ceramic. You write a character. Dingir, the star sign, the determinative for a god. It is an 8-pointed star. Stroke, stroke, stroke. The ink feels lubricated. The spit you added earlier makes it glide over the rough surface. It dries almost instantly as the water evaporates, leaving behind a matte black mark that looks like it was burned into the clay. It doesn't flake. It doesn't smear when you brush your finger over it lightly. It works. You set the sherd down. You look at the mortar full of ink. It is a bowl of potential. With this, you could write a letter to the king of Ur. You could record the sale of 1,000 sheep. You could write a lament for a destroyed city that will make people weep 4,000 years from now. But for now, your job is done. The headmaster will be pleased, or at least he won't be angry, which is the best you can hope for. You stand up. Your knees crack. Your back is stiff. You have been hunched over in this dim, cold room for hours. You stretch, reaching your arms up toward the ceiling beams. The rushlight has burned low, the flame retreating into the wick. You look at your hands. They are a disaster. Your fingertips are stained a deep, permanent gray. There is black grime under your nails. There's a smear of soot on your forearm that looks like a bruise. And you have dried clay caked into the fine lines of your palms, turning your skin into a topographic map of a drought. You walk to the water basin in the corner. You pick up a small lump of rough soap, a mixture of wood ash and animal fat that smells faintly rancid but works miracles on grease. You dip your hands into the cold water. Splash. The water turns gray instantly as the surface clay dissolves. You rub the soap between your palms. It doesn't lather like modern soap, it just creates a slippery, gritty film. You scrub. 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 You focus on your cuticles. You focus on the calluses on your writing finger. The ash in the soap acts as an abrasive, sanding away the top layer of ink-stained skin. It is harsh, but effective. The mainstream historical fact to wrap up your morning is that scribes were a distinct social class, and their hands were their badge of office. In artwork, they are often depicted with soft, unblemished bodies, unlike the muscular laborers or soldiers, but their hands were often stained. To have black hands was, in a strange way, a sign of privilege. It meant you didn't have to plow the fields under the burning sun. It meant you lived indoors. It meant you controlled the words. You rinse your hands. The water in the basin is now a murky, swirling storm of gray and black. You shake your hands dry. They are red from the cold and the scrubbing, and they still aren't perfectly clean. The ink has settled too deep for that. But they are respectable. You wipe them on your tunic. It's fine. The tunic is already old. You look around the room one last time. The mortar is covered with a wooden lid to keep the dust out. The stylus is rinsed and sitting next to it. The clay tablet is wrapped in a damp cloth to keep it workable for the students who will arrive soon. The lamp-black shelves are stacked. Order has been imposed on chaos. You walk to the heavy wooden door. You push it open. The light that hits you is blinding. The sun is fully risen now. It is a brilliant white gold light that bleaches the color out of the dusty street. The heat hits you like a physical wall, warm and dry. The city of Nippur is awake. You can hear the shouting of vendors, the braying of donkeys, the distant chanting of priests from the temple complex. You step out of the cool, dark womb of the Ajubba and into the noise of the day. You blink, your pupils contracting painfully. You turn back and pull the door shut. Thud. The latch clicks. You are tired, but it is a good tiredness. It is the simple, honest fatigue of having made something with your own hands. You made the tool that makes history possible. You stand there for a moment in the warm sun, leaning against the warm mud brick wall of the school. The heat soaks into your shoulders, loosening the knots of tension. You close your eyes against the glare. The sounds of the city seem to drift away, becoming distant and muffled, like you were hearing them from underwater. The shouting becomes a murmur. The clatter becomes a rhythm. You are done. You don't have to scrape any more lamps. You don't have to grind any more stone. You don't have to wedge any more clay. Imagine yourself walking slowly home. Your feet are heavy. The dust of the street feels soft under your sandals. You aren't going to a palace. You are going to a simple room, perhaps with a mat on the floor and a small window looking out at the sky. You lie down. The reed mat is cool. You let your limbs sink into it. You can still feel the ghost of the rhythmic motion in your arm. Round and round and round. But it isn't straining you anymore. It is rocking you. The blackness of the ink fills your mind. It is a peaceful blackness. It is the blackness of deep, dreamless sleep. It is the blackness of the night sky over the desert. Everything is mixed. Everything is smooth. Everything is ready. You can let go of the pestle now. You can let go of the reed. You can let go of the day. Drift away from the tablet house. Drift away from the river. Drift into the silence. You are written. You are permanent. You are asleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.